Hey everyone, welcome to my channel if you're new here, and if you're back, thanks for stopping by again. I am doing a video about a wonderful Omega watch from the late 1980s to early or mid 1990s, specifically I believe 1988 to 1995. It's the Omega Seamaster 200M. You're probably much more familiar with the Omega Seamaster Professional 300M, which was released in 1993 and was essentially the successor to this watch. The 300M was much more of a hit for Omega, and that line, what are popularly called the Bond Seamaster watches, because they were initially featured in the GoldenEye Bond movie. That line of watch has obviously been a tremendous success and a big part of the resurgence of Omega. But prior to that, like I said, around 1988, Omega did release this very interesting and unique watch. I say interesting and unique because I really don't think this looks like much of what Omega has put out after this watch came out. And as a result, I think today, 30 or so years later, this is a very unique watch. And I've done videos about these watches before. I have two other ones which do not have the gold bezel or crown, and I'll make a long story short. I was not impressed with this watch when I would look at them and online listings, and I was much more focused on the 300M. I did not find this design particularly appealing, but after some time of collecting 300M Seamasters, I wanted to try and see what one of these watches was like, just out of sheer curiosity, really, not that much interest. And upon receiving the watch, I was truly impressed with the design. I'm not going to say I was truly impressed with the quality, because the build quality of these watches is definitely not up to the level of the 300M, and you can see how Omega has improved greatly with its build quality. Here's a view of the clasp, for example. Omega would not put a clasp like this on a watch today, even though it's not the nicest looking, kind of a stamped metal. It's actually quite strong. It's not a flimsy clasp, but it's just not at the same level of what Omega does today. Neither with that clasp with the various adjustments, spring bar holes. It's just stuff that is not at the level of today's Omega. Nonetheless, the watch, I think what it may lack in sheer build quality or solidness or heft, it really makes up for it in its design, which is really stunningly beautiful, and more so in person, much more so in person. Integrated bracelets have made a big comeback as of late, and this is a kind of watch that really shows you why that is. The bracelet and watch head flow so seamlessly together. It really looks nice on the wrist. I mean, it looks nice just in hand looking at it, but it looks fantastic on the wrist. It's really, the integrated word needs to be emphasized more. It is almost like a complete one-piece design like this. It's not a matter of taking a watch head and just attaching a strap to it. And don't get me wrong, I do like that, because I do wear a lot of my watches on NATO nylon straps, and that's unfortunately a deficiency of this watch or any watch with an integrated bracelet, that you do not have that option. I have searched high and low for any alternative straps, just because I like to see what's out there and in case of a future problem, and I have not been able to find any for this watch. So you're limited to the integrated bracelet. Wanted to show you a quick side-by-side here. That's the 200M on the right, Aqua Terra first generation, 39.2 millimeter case diameter on the left. As you can see, they're very close in size, as their numbers would suggest, except for the fact that the 200M has a rotating bezel. The Aqua Terra first generation is also an amazing watch. Substantially higher build quality, I would say. Substantially more solid feeling in hand. But both watches are beautiful in their own way. The Aqua Terra is a much more traditional conservative design, in my opinion, a much more timeless design. The 200M is a bolder design, more unique, more risk-taking from a design perspective, and I would say, more iconic of a particular period in time. And I don't think those are negatives at all. And especially if you've had enough of the sort of conservative, safe design watches like Aqua Terra's, it's nice to have something that's truly different in your collection, such as this. And another great feature about this watch is that it's super thin. I unfortunately don't have the thickness number available to me off the top of my head. I think I've mentioned it in my other videos about the 200M, but this watch is really thin, really short lug-to-lug distance due to the integrated design, and almost lug-less, really, if you see how the case flows into the bracelet. But all that makes for an extremely comfortable wearing experience and a very good fit under, shirt cuff or really anywhere. I find the watches that hug the wrist to be the most comfortable, and this is a good example of that right here. As I said, the other ones which I've shown on prior videos do not have the gold bezel. I think the ones that are all steel with no gold are probably the more popular, just because they're the more versatile design out of these. But I think this amount of gold is not gaudy at all. I think it does go with the design. And it's an interesting case here with the 200M, where sometimes the gold ones are actually cheaper than the steel ones. So if you do like gold, it's definitely a good watch to look into for that. This is the larger version. I've discussed this more in depth in my other videos, but most of the 200Ms are the smaller 36mm version. This is the larger 40mm version. Highly suggest going for the 40. Even on my thin wrist, the 40 fits fine. I feel the 36 is just too small for by today's standards. Another interesting thing to note with these watches, which I again covered more extensively in the prior video, but there's a lot of variations in the handset, the crown, the case back, and the clasp. Omega switched those midway through production of these watches, I think around 1989, 1990. This version has all of the older, the variation which came first. So it has the Mercedes hour hand, which was replaced with a sword hand. It has a lobed crown versus a ridged crown, which came after. It has a single flip lock clasp versus a double, which came after. And it has a two-piece case back, which was later replaced with a one-piece. So I don't have much of a preference either way. I just find it interesting that the watch exists in such variations. And a lot of times you'll find a combination of an older, let's say, handset with a newer crown, or a old crown with a newer case back. I've seen a lot of combinations in the listings I've browsed, and even among the few which I've handled. So it's an interesting collector note, and I think just adds another layer of fun to looking for these watches. Lastly, I forgot to mention, this is a quartz variant. The quartz are way more common than the automatics. If you really want an automatic, you can find them, but you're going to have to spend a lot more time looking. I don't mind quartz in this application. This is more a piece which I bought simply for its design and just the looks primarily above all else, and I really don't mind and actually appreciate the lower maintenance nature of quartz for a watch like this. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, or thoughts about this watch. Glad you tuned in, and if you stuck around this long, and see you in the next one.